And we're live on Facebook. Happy Sunday. Happy
Hap-
Sunday.
Happy Sunday, Lucas. Boy, are we having a great topic today. I feel like it's a very, very hot topic because we don't speak about it, but yet everybody thinks it at times. So, we're going to talk about, do we have to love our parents? And coming from an abusive childhood, as you and I come from, it's a simple no is the answer, but we're going to explore why no is the answer actually today. So I am so excited for everyone that is sharing this hour with us this Sunday. Welcome, everyone, and we hope you will enjoy this Sunday chat.
Yes. It's so if we stop for a moment and just even look at what the word family means, what the word friend means, what these sacred relationship words mean, and if we're, I think, willing to objectively look at it, what we would define them as is anyone that shows us unconditional love.
Yes.
Therefore, there are many blood relations who don't show unconditional love. Therefore, they are not my family. I call family anyone that shows me unconditional love.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. We're obviously we're live on Facebook, but Facebook in a way did a disservice to humanity because they used the word friend as just a
Mhm.
simple click, accept, click, accept, and like, oh, that's our new thinking of what a friend is. But to me, a friend is anyone who shows me unconditional love and vice versa, then
Yes.
become our family. So we are actually empowered to choose who our family are and who we allow to be those parental figures in our life.
Yes, that is so true because before we even start talking about do we have to love our parents, we have to define what is love actually in
Mm,
this sentence, because usually it's, I think we are exchanging it with loyalty, and that's not the same thing. I mean, loyalty has to do with being dependent on someone, being attached to someone, being a part of something. This is love is something different. For me personally, if I'll have to define love in this setting, it would be someone who I want to spend time with.
mm,
That is where love is exchanged. Or love to me is to be seen in a relationship, to be understood, to be protected as a child. This is what I need, and that is what love means. So if my parents cannot give me this, then why am I obliged to give them this back? Because I'm in a relationship with them where they are the authority and I am not.
mm.
So I need their protection. And if that doesn't come, then it's almost inhuman to say that you have to love your parents. That is a slap in the face almost to say that if you come from an abusive background.
Yes, to stay in that position. It's interesting how
Yeah.
you were in the word love is also like the the word blue. There's many different shades of blue, and there's many different
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
definitions of love. And I think one of the things that I have learned and that has helped me because I was confused on this, like, well, what is love? Like, if am I loving? Am I being loving if I tell the truth? Am I being loving if I heal myself and it exposes the wake of things that aren't healthy? And love means to give someone their highest good. and,
Yes.
and that's what they it's not emotional, and it's not a feeling, and it's not a subservient like submission posture. It's to give someone the
Mm,
highest good. And those that are not healthy to be
mm,
in relationship with, the highest good for them is to detach from them so that they can have an objective mirror back to why. And it would be beautiful if they asked why and
mm,
how can we reconcile. But that's not typically that dynamic. It's
mm,
continuing the same abusive pattern of blame, projection.
mm,
um, and so I learned that I can be a loving person, but not everyone's worthy of me pouring my love into. I can still
mm.
love them, but just love them from afar. It just happens to be my love, not being in a relationship with them.
Mm. Yeah, for me, it has become, I don't know if I can say that I would be able to love my parents, because as I said, the word love is a very, very strong word in this. But I can say, if I can understand them, if I can see and understand their behavior, and also know that their behavior has nothing to do with me. As a grown up, I can see that. As a child, I'm in the midst of this soup. Their behavior affects me, and
Mm,
they are the authority in my life. So I need to stay in that space,
yes.
regardless of what I want, which means that I'm forced to be in it. When I'm a grown up, I can remove myself from it. And if I give myself time, I can look back and I can see. If I force myself to love them, then I can never pass
Mm,
that threshold where I understand them. Because if I don't love them, well, then I'm in guilt, which makes me, it stops me from seeing who they are. They are wounded beings. That
yes.
is why they act the way they act. Their actions are actually mirroring the scars in them. It has nothing to do with me. So if I can stand in that understanding, then I can let go, which means that I can feel compassion for them. And
Mm,
that's a different thing, because feeling compassion for someone doesn't mean that I need to be in the same space as them. It just means that I understand what they did. I just don't like their actions. And if they are not changing, then why would I stay in that space? Because it's still hurting. So I remove myself, but I can look at them with compassion. And I think that is a way to solve things for oneself, not to feel the guilt for not wanting to spend time with them. Because as I said before, that's a thing that I need if I want to share love with someone. I need to feel that I want to spend time with them.
yes. Yes. The, this is such an important topic, and one that people
Yes.
don't really want to approach usually.
Mm,
It's a taboo because there's so much power in that family structure, the guilt, the lineage, heritage, the traditions, the name, the dynamics. And then as humanity is conditioned to rely upon the authority figures to take care of them, because as children we need the parents to take care of us,
mm,
instead of staying in that posture of I always need someone to take care of me, it's our responsibility to awaken from that posture and realize that I am a sovereign being who takes care of myself, and any one that I allow in my space must be equal to the boundaries that I hold and the
mm,
container that I'm keeping for myself, which is
mm,
a loving, safe, honest, open dialogue container.
mm,
So what happens typically, people keep themselves from experiencing pure true freedom because they're still tied to making excuses for the parent structure. Well, they
yeah.
did their best, or well, they
Mhm,
perhaps they did, but you're still you. I'm still me. I still have to
mhm,
breathe and wake up and do what I need to do today. And am I free? And what keeps me from freedom? If it's protecting the family structure in lieu of my own freedom, then guess what? I'm choosing my own freedom every single time.
yeah, well, exactly, because if you come from an abusive family, I mean, every child is in a way programmed to be loyal to our parents.
Mm,
It's a way to survive in this reality. You have to be loyal to your caretakers. But what if your caretakers are also the abusers? Then you have to be loyal to the ones abusing you. And
right.
that can be tricky, because you think the loyalty equals love and that you honor your parents. But if they're your abusers, then you can't stay in that place. As a child, you
Exactly.
have no choice. You're
Exactly.
born into a family, you're born into a structure.
Right.
And I mean, the only thing you can do is to organize yourself so that you can survive in that structure. And
Right.
that is when the programming comes, when you start, as you said, you start protecting your abusers because you're afraid that you will be punished if someone from the outside sees what is happening. And when you do that, you start lying to yourself, and also you start twisting what love actually is. You start twisting the word integrity, sovereignty. You start tricking yourself into believing that you have no integrity, that you have no sovereignty, and that what you're doing right now is love.
Right.
And that is painful because it won't give you the reality that you're actually here to explore as a grown up. It will always pull you back into this dark place where you can't find your right space, so to speak, because you were put there. You had no choice. This is what your job now is to untangle it and say, okay, what is love, without punishing your parents? Because for me, it was like I released myself from the energetic bonds from my parents when I realized that they did not know how to do better. I was putting too much responsibility on them because they were the authority in my life. And as a child, you put responsibility on your parents to take care of you.
Right.
And then as a grown up, looking back at it as a parent, I knew that they did not know how to do otherwise because of their own scars.
Right.
That's where the understanding, and as I say, I cannot go as far as to say I love them, because there is no connection that I would interpret as love. But I do not feel guilt when I say this. I can
Yeah.
say I see them for the wounded human beings they are, and I feel compassion for them. I even have empathy for them. But love is something different for me.
Which I appreciate, because first of all, it's very courageous of us to even do this topic, because this is the most sensitive thing. This is why we're talking about this, everyone, is we want people to experience the true soul freedom that they've come here to claim. And yet this family structure is the most powerful structure to break. And when we're hurt and still tethered to that structure, we can't heal. If we keep going back to the person who wounded us, and then they keep wounding the same wound over and over and over, we never can heal. So to detach from that relationship, allow our time to heal, and then realize that I'm not going to be a perpetrator and reciprocate back to them what they do to us, but me holding space. Like we were talking the other day, I honor my parents by the life I live, by the light that I am in this world. I don't have to be in relationship with them, nor am I. And I bless them to be the fullness of what they're supposed to be in their life. It just is not going to be in relationship to me. And that is freedom. I don't have to come back in and transgress my own soul just to fit into someone else's joy. That is slavery. And it is time as humanity awakens from all this and say, yeah, if you want to do it, you can choose to. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. There is no more haves in this world. There's only get to and choose to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there is a stigma in our society when we talk about our parents, because as we say, you have to honor thy parents. But as I said, you didn't choose to be born. They chose to give you life. So it's their responsibility. I remember my father calculating how much I have cost him financially. And I mean, I didn't ask to be born. He didn't have to buy diapers for me, and calculating how much that cost, because I actually didn't ask to be born. He and my mother made that choice. And I understand that myself. I have a son, but I made the choice to give my son life. And I do not feel like he owes me anything. I'm a portal for him to enter this world. But it's like a door. I mean, he doesn't owe me anything. And that is how I release this energetic bond, because he doesn't owe me anything. He can give me anything he wants.
That's right.
Underlining whatever he wants to give me back. I cannot put conditions on it just because I was a container and I gave him life into this reality.
Yes, yes.
He doesn't owe me. We do not owe our parents anything. But that is also how you create space for true love to come forth. When you do not put conditions on this, as a parent, I cannot want my son to live a life which fits me, because then I am ruining his life. And that's where hate and other negative feelings are born.
Yes.
I have to give this life to him as a gift with nothing attached to it.
Yeah, no conditions. It's which is
No
true
conditions.
love. True love is
Yes.
unconditional. There is no such thing
Yes.
as conditional love or unconditional love. Love is always unconditional.
Mm,
And it's the perpetrators or those who have twisted those words love with conditions that have confused
mm,
our this doesn't seem right. If it was unconditional, then I would never be craving something more than what it is because I would have the
yes.
fullness of love. But because it's conditional and warped and twisted and it's all performance based, and if you do, then I will be, and if I be, then you will do,
Yeah.
and it's this constant
Yes. Yeah.
dance.
It's yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was
Sorry,
just
I
gonna say,
interrupted you.
but
Yeah.
when we detach from that and say, I no longer want
Mm,
to dance in that, my experience of unconditional love does not derive from my parental figures. It derives from
mm,
God Himself or itself, like the source of all that is, not a
mm,
human structure anymore. So that, yeah,
mm,
I guess affirming what you're saying is allowing your son to just be, always be, and
mm,
there's no condition to it. The same with my children. You can come, you
mm,
can go, you can never talk to me ever again, and I will love you no less at
mm,
all.
mm.
Period.
Yes. Because what I truly feel is something that messes stuff up in families is because of our parents having their own wounds and being taught that love is transactional. If you do this for me, I'll do that for you, and that then I will love you, and then you can love me. Love is not transactional. It
Right.
doesn't matter if it took me 10 hours to give birth to my son. It does not matter. It is not his responsibility. I cannot want anything back for this because
Mm,
I made the choice. I
mm,
am responsible for all my choices in life. So, going back to my own childhood, when my father calculates how much health I have cost him, how much money, I mean, this is insane because it says you will have to spend the rest of your life paying me back because I paid for you.
right.
And you can sit there and say, excuse me, but I didn't ask to be born. And then you're ungrateful, you do not love him.
Right.
That's what I mean with the transactional love. It can never be. Love cannot be transactional.
Right.
That is an economic factor. It has nothing to do with love.
Oh,
So,
so good.
this is why we do not have to love our parents. If we
Right.
want to love them, we love them, but we do not have to love them. And society puts this thing on us that you have to love your parents because they gave you life.
Right.
You can feel you can feel that you want to give something back to your parents because they gave so much, but they never wanted something back. Then that is when you feel that you want to give them something. But if there are conditions, you have to give me this or that, and even worse, if it was abusive and they still want you to give something back, of course
Yeah.
you can't love.
Right.
And if society says, well, you're a bad child if you cannot love your parents, you will walk with guilt, there is no reason for us to have this guilt
That's right.
because everything is warped into this transactional way of giving and taking love.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny you were saying like how much you cost, which is so crazy. I was given, I think for my 18th birthday, um a keyboard, and I was for Christmas and or
Mm,
graduation, I don't recall, but and I was told how much
it
um
costs.
my it cost always.
Yeah.
Always. And to the point where 4 years ago, I gave the keyboard away. I didn't want it anymore because every time I sat on it, I remembered how much it
Mm,
cost, how much it cost, how much it cost, how much it cost, how much it, I'm like, oh my gosh.
mm,
You know what?
mm.
I'm buying my own keyboard, and I know
Yes.
it doesn't matter how much it costs. I get to create with this, and I would give freely. And it's
Mm,
so interesting. You said I hadn't thought about that like as a
mm,
thing, but so much. And um, Christian has a really good question. She says, how do you respond to the cultural bonds of elderly care? I'm a gypsy by nature, but am now forced to um, stay near to care for my mother. My sister lives her life independently and feels no pull to care for my mother, and she would otherwise be alone. So
mm.
this gal, how, yeah, how would you
Well,
this is fascinating. This is good.
yeah, it's a fascinating question, because in the question is actually the word forced, which means that you actually don't want to do this. So what is making you do this? Your sister is choosing not to do it. What makes you want to do it? Or what makes you feel that you have to do it? That is the first
Mhm.
question you have to ask yourself.
So good.
And then being brutally honest when you answer it. I can hear somewhere echoing that you feel the guilt that you need to take care of, because at the same time, when you look at an elderly person, like when I look at my mother, for instance, there has never been love between us. And yet I can feel compassion because she's an old person. She cannot take care of herself. I can see the struggle that she's going through. And that might put you in a guilt relationship to your mother, as it puts me in a guilt relationship to my mother. But that guilt is not beneficial for neither me nor her.
Right.
So in my case, I made arrangements so that my mother would live in an elderly care home where she actually thrives now, but she didn't want it in the beginning, because I felt that I would betray myself if I allowed my life to continue to be an extension of her needs, because my life as a young woman, as a child, as a grown up woman has always been fulfilling her needs. And
Hmm.
that is not my life purpose. So, somewhere you need to put a line and say, okay, maybe I can arrange this in a different way. And then you can go visit her. But having her staying in your home, and I don't know, you have to figure this one out yourself. But the question is, why do you feel forced? And in that, you have your answer.
Right. The As she is saying that it's the term good or bad is who's the good daughter, who's the bad daughter. That's conditional. That is unhealthy. And until we let go
Mm.
of good, am I good? What does good mean? Oh, you're be a
Mm.
good boy. You're a good boy. That's what, good
That
girl,
is when,
good boy.
yeah, that is when you are fulfilling someone else's need.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
You have to ask yourself, what is my purpose in life? What is my mission in life? Where does the things that I am allowing into this reality, where does it come from? Does it come from guilt? Am I doing things because I feel guilty, or am I doing things because it feels good for me to help someone?
Hmm.
And regardless of who it is, if it's your mother or who it is, there are energetic bonds that needs to be looked at, and your actions need to come from the right place.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a tough one. It really is a tough one, because the entire society will tell you that it is your responsibility to do what a good daughter does.
Hmm.
Sometimes our parents, and this comes from experience, will put one child against the other child
Yep.
to say she's a good daughter and that's a bad daughter, and then get what they want because they put children against each other.
Yes.
I have a pact with my brothers, which says, regardless of what our parents used to say about us, we know who we are, and we do not listen to their description of who we are. That's a very healthy pact, trust me, because it doesn't matter what my mother tells my brother. He phones me and we have a one on one conversation, and he knows who I am and I know who he is. And we don't need our parents to describe who we are in relationship to each other.
Yes.
Does it make sense to you what I'm
Yeah.
saying here? Yeah.
Yeah. I think, it's funny while you're talking, my mind is like, because I have a lot of family on here. I know they watch my stuff and all these things like, oh, are they listening right now? Can I share? It's fascinating. So I
Yeah.
had to come back in. And what you're saying is so true. It's you and your brothers made that decision because you
Yeah.
are of your peers.
Yes.
And true unconditional love would be if I was the perpetrator, if I was my parents in my children's story, what I would want my children to have is a parent that says, "Man, I did blow it," and have that humility to say, "I was broken and I was
Mhm.
a mess, and thank you for holding space for me to heal and whatever,
Mhm.
but not trying to protect the facade of, well, I did, this is the best. Like,
Mhm.
well, if that was the best, you did horrible. Like your best was the worst. Like, what are you talking about? I remember telling my brother, if I hear that they did their best one more time, I am going to
Mm.
literally lose it, because that is the last thing that I want to hear, nor does it even matter. The scars physically, emotionally are still with me to this day. So whether you did your best or didn't do your best, who cares? Are
Mm.
you holding space for me to heal? And do you have the humility to say, yeah, I wasn't,
Mm.
I wasn't the space. And then I was listening to my brother share. My brother has, if I was going to give a percentage, almost 90% no memory of his childhood, of our childhood. He can't
Mhm.
recall
Mhm.
anything. In fact, we were looking at a photo, probably when we were working on our course, pulling out some photos,
Mm.
and
Mm.
I'm in junior high at the time. I just know we were looking at the posters on the wall. We shared a room and I don't remember it, and neither does he. And I'm in junior high. I don't, even right now, like I cannot recall sharing a room with him, which is so much trauma and blocked out memories and all these things. But I
Mm.
listened to him talk on a podcast the other day, and he said, my brother and I were raised to be enemies. That
Yes.
I thought I was the black sheep of the family, and he thought he was the black sheep of the family. And what you
Mhm.
just described, that separation,
Mhm.
is
Mm.
how the control mechanism worked.
Yes, absolutely. I remember very well as a child also how my father used to say, when I did something good, he would scold my brother and say, look at how good she does this. She's
Mm,
a good daughter and you're not. And I used to come into his room and I was only 5, 6 years old, or maybe even older because I came back to live with him when I was 6. So maybe 8, 9 years old. And
mm,
I would hold my brother and I would say, listen, he
mm,
does not know who you are. I love you, and you and I are equal always. I used to protect him so much that when we got older, when we came into our teens, he would protect me because
mm,
he was bigger than I at that time, and he used to protect me, he used to lie for me,
mm,
not to me, but for me,
mm.
telling my father lies of where I was and what I was doing because he wanted to protect me if I was late home from work or something. So he would lie for me. So we had this pact, and it started like a wordless thing. We didn't say that to each other, but as grown-ups having our own children, and when my parents used to have dramas between them, being the leading having the leading roles in our family, and we were spectators, and then we were pulled in when they needed us
Yeah.
in order to keep that drama between them going on. And then when they were done, they would just release us from it, and we would sit there being drained of energy, not understanding what we just explored. When we were older, having our own children, I remember us saying that it doesn't matter what they say. We will always speak to each other. We will always bring forth the truth between each other. And I have two brothers, and both of them, we have this pact together that no matter what they say, we talk with each other so we know. Because otherwise, you do become enemies with people who you actually shouldn't be enemies with, who have had the same background as you, who had the same problems as you. And
Yes.
it's usually parents who have these narcissistic traits that need the drama and that play the leading role and
Right.
use their children like pawns in this.
Yes.
And so what you're talking about is the same thing. You have to rediscover your relationship to your brother because somewhere down the line you had the same childhood
Yes. Yes.
and the same pain and the same stuff going on.
Yeah.
I realized this when I talked to my youngest brother who lived longer period of time with both of my parents, and he is really wounded by this,
Mm,
have has been wounded for a long time. And when I talk to him, I can see that he went through the same thing as I did. How can I be not friends with him? How can he be my enemy just because my father is describing him as my enemy?
right.
So protecting each other in a family like that is what you need to do if you're siblings and you have the same abusers around you.
And I think truly it's impossible to heal. I would rarely say an absolute like that, but I really believe
Yeah.
it is impossible to heal if we are going to continue to protect the family image.
Mm.
Well, you can't be free. You can't find your own sovereignty. You can't express your own traumas because whatever facade, image, power structure, how you're perceived, who cares? At the end of the day,
Mm.
are you a whole, healthy, aligned person to your soul? Have you faced the greatest pains, spoken your greatest pains, and released finally those great pains without concern of how it's perceived in that power structure dynamic? And if I could bless anyone with anything, it is freedom from that guilt. You are
Mm.
not responsible for protecting those secrets. You are not responsible for protecting that facade any longer. Everything done in darkness will be exposed in light. Everything. And only in light can we heal. And Jay-Z has a line in a song. He said, "That which you do not reveal, you cannot heal."
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to continue down this protecting these facades and what people think, we'll never heal. We'll never be free.
Mm. Yeah, that is so true, because what you need to do is I talk about the love filter. I do not allow anything into this reality unless it passes my love filter.
Mm-hmm.
So my mother is still alive. My father passed away a couple of years ago. And when I visit my mother, I sometimes feel like she needs to know how hurt I was as a child. Now, she's an elderly woman. And before I scold her, before I bring her back into the past and tell her all the bad stuff that she has done, I stop myself in this and I go, this is my responsibility. What do I want to accomplish with this? Do
Mm-hmm.
I want this elderly woman to feel horrible when I leave this room? What will it give me? Well, it will
Right.
give my ego a boost,
Right.
but my soul will cry because she doesn't understand the difference right now. So, whatever happened to me in my past is, I own it. It is mine. It is my responsibility to look at it and find my ways of soothing myself. I have to be my own parent. I can't go there and want her to be the perfect mother or be the mother because she was not capable then. Why would she be capable now?
Right.
It's
Right.
even worse now. So, releasing myself from that yearning of having parents.
Mm.
I remember daydreaming when I was a child of I used to I used to daydream that Michael Landon was my father or Gene Kelly was my father, because they had this vibe around them that I could trust them, be happy,
Yeah.
want to spend time with them. Those thoughts
Yeah.
around that. And it kept me in a daydreaming mode because I always had this window of opportunity open for my father to become as them. So I was thinking, maybe later, maybe when I get older, maybe if I do this, maybe if I say that, maybe if I bend myself
Yes. Like a
over
pretzel. Yeah.
totally,
Yeah.
yes,
Exactly.
he
Yeah.
will finally see me
Yeah.
and acknowledge that I am a beautiful being. And I waited for this for so many years, and he never did it because I was in this daydream. I was trying to fit in to be someone who I am not. And
Right.
as a grown up, I can choose if I want to bend myself like a pretzel or if I want to stand in my sovereignty and say, I see you, you didn't know how to do better. Thank you so much. And release.
Right.
Love, there is no equation here where love is included.
Right. Yeah. That's right. Well, it's also interesting. Like it's a more philosophical question of love, because you could say you do love them because you didn't seek to destroy them. You didn't return
Yes.
back upon them that which they
Yes.
brought to you, and that is love. It's just not the
Mm.
feeling of love. I'm not in love with them, but I hold space for them, like
Healing.
to,
Hmm.
yeah, to live your best life. Go. I hold no
Mm.
account anymore. I'm not a wounded child. I faced it, but I have every right to speak my truth and speak my experience and speak my story. And I was
Hmm.
there and you were there, and all I can say is my story, and I'm not worried about offending or protecting anything other than
Mm,
freeing my soul. And in that space, we give everyone permission to do the same, where we're not indicting.
mm,
My great dream is to have these healing events in stadiums where perpetrators can come down as well, that we're not holding to account just the
mm,
victims of pain, but the perpetrators of pain, and saying, we can heal. Come, let us heal together. But the only
mm,
way to heal is you have to tell the truth. There is no other
mhm,
way. We cannot be free if we want to continue to protect the lie, the facade, the veneer,
mm,
the whatever. You
mm,
leave that home and the smile goes on and everything's fine.
mm,
Oh, how are you doing? But
mm,
people, the suicide rate in the United States is up 30% in 2020.
mm.
And it was the highest it's ever been in recorded history. That means every
Yeah.
time you see someone on the street and like, oh, how you doing? But when they
Mm,
go behind those closed doors, it's a different world. We know that to be true.
mm,
And it's the same with the parent child dynamic. It's time that we stop protecting the facade and we tell our own truth.
mm. As a child, you can't do that
No.
because it is a too big task to do. This is why most children do not speak their truth, because they're afraid. I remember myself as a child never telling anyone how my life was at home. I lived a double life. I was this perfect student, perfect friend in school, and then when I went home, I was upholding a whole household. I was making dinner for an entire family since I was 8 years old. I was washing clothes, cleaning, being the perfect daughter, never being acknowledged as that. So, just for me to tell that truth to my teachers in school, I had this idea that if I tell them what I'm going through in my home, because my father was not healthy, he had some kind of mental illness which was not defined at that time. If I would have told them this, then in my imagination, and somewhere this imagination must have been planted by society or by my parents or whoever it was, if I say something, then they will take my brothers away, they will take me away, they will split up the family, and that is a very uncomfortable you can't see where this is going, so it is unknown to you, and that's why you don't do it. You stay in it. Even if it is abusive, you stay in it because everything else seems worse because you don't know what it is.
Right.
So that is why most children never say when things are not good in their families. Of course, there are lots of families which have loving relationships and loving parents. I mean, my husband has been brought up by his mother, and his mother is unconditionally loving. For
Mhm.
me, it was amazing to see something like that. I was 20 years old, 21 years old when I met her the first time, and I couldn't believe that
Mhm.
there were parents that could be as she was. So,
Mhm.
not all parents are the way we are describing them here, of
Yes.
course.
Yes.
What
Certainly.
we're talking about is abusive families where children are silent, where they cannot speak their truth, and then are forced to live their lives telling that they love their parents, even if their parents were abusive.
Yes.
That, I think, is a very, very bad pattern which needs to be released, broken, looked upon in
Yes.
order to feel like you're a whole being when you're a grown up.
There's a spell to it. There's that
Yes,
spell. There's an allure.
yes.
I love you, but I hurt you, but the pain
It's
causes
for
harm.
your own good.
It's for your own good. I did my best. I loved you. I
Yes.
love you. I love you. And then pretty
Mhm.
soon, as adults, because I see this in very people very close to me,
Mm.
um, humans are so amazing. I was talking about this on a podcast the other day. Our
Mm.
bodies go into shock when we experience physical trauma, and
Yes.
our minds go into a sense of emotional shock, what we call the Stockholm Syndrome, where
Yes.
you love your perpetrator, but that's just a way to
Yes.
survive. Most
Yes.
adults are still Stockholm Syndrome victims to the
Yes.
parents, and they're saying, I love my parents. Like, you were molested. I know, but they did. Wait, you were beat. You're telling me if I did what happened to you to a random puppy on the street, you would love me? You would call the cops on me. But because there's this spell of, oh, they're my parents, it's a bizarre in the well, I was going to say it's a bizarre trait that humans have, but it's a survival trait. But the perpetrators know it. And the
Yes.
narcissists know how to use that allure, the fake cry. Oh, I did my best. Really?
Mm.
Tell the truth then right now. Tell the truth about
Mm.
every single thing you did.
Mm.
You're not sorry. You just don't want someone to
Yes.
see the truth.
Mm. Yeah, the Stockholm Syndrome is such a such an interesting thing, because I think why we find ourselves in it is because the source of comfort, your parents are the source of comfort, because you're born into this. You're a little baby,
Mm,
defenseless. You're born into this. So they are supposed to be the source of comfort. And this is how we interpret it as children. This is my source of comfort. But the source of comfort is also the source of discomfort, of
right.
abuse, and of terror. And this makes you alienated from everything. It's like walking into a room and being alienated by everything in the room. I think for me, it created an enormous sense of loneliness within me, because where do I find comfort when my source of comfort is abuse? How do I find myself in this? It's You have to go back and see that the source of comfort is you.
Yes.
You are your own parent. That is the source of comfort. And then you can release everyone else that were there. Because if you think that the source of comfort is being loved by your parents, and that transactional love needs to be made so that they will love you, you will never feel whole, and you will always feel lonely and not seen, because
Mhm.
love is not transactional and the source of comfort is always within you.
That's right.
It took me half a lifetime to reach that knowledge or wisdom, to understand that the source of comfort in my life is not outside of me,
Right.
it is inside of me.
Right. Right.
And the loneliness is horrible when you're in that space where you know that, okay, so I'm not protected. Where do I go? Well, I'll go and talk to my parents. And then they abuse you. They tell you, for instance, what did I tell you? You did something else than I told you to do.
Mhm.
So you have to deal with it yourself. You feel like you're not seen there.
Yeah.
And of course, you will feel lonely because there is no comfort there. And you're looking for it there. And they're the abuser. It's such a weird world we live in when we come from
It,
abusive families.
it is, and it's so complicated and layered. And I'm thinking, just even, I can't tell you how many people I coach, and no one likes to say the word abuse. It's like this taboo. And
Mhm.
wherever we have triggers, that's where we get to go explore, because the only way out is through, and you have to go through these words. If you have an issue with the word abuse, I would ask you why. What are you trying to protect? What image are you trying to protect?
Mhm.
Because anything that minimizes the fullness of you, the fullness of me, the fullness of us at any time, squeezed us, that was not inflating
Mhm.
us from within. Therefore, it hindered us. It's not, you can call that abuse. And I don't have any qualms about saying the word abuse, but many people do. But when I coach people, I ask, were you hit as a child? 98% of people say no. So, okay, you weren't hit. Fine. Were you spanked as a child? And they say yes. And I just look at them. Why? Because they called it spanking. You weren't hit. The
Mhm.
etymology of the word spank means to make a horse run faster. So
Mhm.
did you perform? I bet you did
Mhm.
perform a lot differently and a lot. I bet your behavior changed. But was that unconditional love? What did you really want in that time? You wanted to be held,
Mhm.
held, not hit. And yet the parent dynamic is that I spank as if it's a virtue. It's not a virtue.
Mhm.
But we are, as sovereign beings, needing to go back and look at that objectively. This is why I like the course that we're creating is so powerful, because you can look at it objectively and then realize, well, where am I today? Am I fully able to express my story? Am I fully free? Do I feel guilt, or am I a sovereign being that can do, say, be, act, move wherever I want, anytime, with anyone, without the confines of, what are they going to think, say, should I not? And when we can look at those and say, yes, I was hurt in those moments, and I love myself now in those moments, not seeking the love from the parent, but actually giving the love from ourselves to ourselves. Because what I learned, that I have always been my own mother and father. I always had to take care of
Same here.
myself and protect myself and nurture myself. I would cry myself to sleep. And then when I had anorexia at 19 years old, trying to just, I mean, I weigh 240 right now. I weighed 172 pounds and same height. I looked disgusting, and I was hating, I took all that pain and I internalized it. And then because that didn't satiate the pain, I tried to kill myself 6 months later, and thank God I didn't die. And since 20 to 34, it was a 14-year trying to outrun that pain before the suicide attempt, until I couldn't outrun the pain anymore. And I had to finally look at it all and say, is there anything really wrong with me? Or am I just carrying pain and trauma that I keep cycling over and over? What is the origin of this? What really happened? And then it blew my family structure up, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, because I am whole. I am free. I am sovereign. I am healed. My brother is sovereign and whole and healed, and our families are beautiful, and we are in alignment, walking together. But it cost something, but it was worth everything.
Yeah, of course. In your case, you had to go through all this in order to find yourself again and know who you are, to connect with your brother, to have a great relationship with your children. And this is the responsibility that I'm actually talking about, which our parents didn't take. They didn't go in and look, what can I change? They just allowed things to be as they were. And since as a child, your survival depends on them. So of course it will put an imprint in you. It's impossible not to. And their actions will become a part of who you are. And it doesn't have to be this way. I understand that when you've been physically abused, you want to return and you want to hate that parent. You want to make them suffer for what they did. But when you do that, you are in a frequency which is not beneficial for you. You are standing in hate, and you are standing in wanting to hurt someone else, and that in the end is hurtful for you. So releasing it, I think we get to that place where we feel that the society wants us to love our parents or honor our parents, even though they don't know what we're carrying in our backpack from our past. So if you can, the first step is to say, okay, I had a not so good relationship with my parents. What was it that made it not so good? Look at it and say, I don't need to love them. I can understand what they did and see if I can feel compassion or empathy for them, so that I can release this. Because if you're in a hate state of mind, when you look at your parents, that would hurt you more than them, because they don't care. Right. I remember my father not caring if I loved him or not. It didn't matter to him, because he was ego triggered all the time. And if I want to change him, I'm ego triggered. If I hate him, I'm ego triggered. And that's not what I'm doing here in this reality. If I want my children to feel the love that I needed as a child, I need to bring it there.
That's right.
It's my responsibility. So understanding that it's not about hating your parents. It's not about going back and releasing hell on them. It's about looking at what can you change in order for you to feel as a whole human being?
Yeah.
And be your own parent. Go back and take care of that little child in your past, because it wasn't taken care of by your parents.
Right. It's I don't know if someone's listening. Hopefully, this speaks to someone listening. I heard when I started talking about it, I had no idea. I never knew that. I never knew that. You guys seem like the perfect family. I never knew that.
Mhm.
And I had to really look at why that perception was. It was very clear after I looked at it that of course I had to keep the image of perfection going, because if I left the house and I didn't keep the perfection, the facade going, what do you think would happen when I went back to the house? So you just
Yeah.
learn to keep this image
Mhm.
projection cycle going. And then people only see what they see, and then they make a judgment on what it is, which is how
Mhm.
our government systems, our religious systems, our all these people put the veneer in people, and then they're shocked
Mhm.
that I can't believe that they embezzled or the abuse or whatever. Well,
Mhm.
take people off pedestals first of all, and
Mhm.
check in with the energy. Is the energy right? Is the energy clear? And that's one of the things of energy never lies. It never lies. If something's weird
Mhm.
or off, it's because it's weird or it's off. And it's
Yes.
time we reclaim that inside of us, like something's off, it's because it's off.
Mhm. Yeah, we are taught to comply because that's how you survive in an
Right.
abusive family.
Right.
That's the first thing you do. You comply and you do as you're told, because then you might not be hit, or you
Yeah.
don't have to feel the fear. You're dodging fear over there. And that's how you are taught to do this later on in society. But I think that being able to see what actually did happen in your childhood is step number one, and looking at it through this love filter that I'm speaking about. I'll give you an example. My mother did not understand how to be a good mother, how to stand up for her children, because she was in a very, very victimized state of mind, which means that she was ego triggered by my father's actions, which were to dominate everything and to control everything. So, in a sense, she felt that if she was quiet, she was protecting us by
Mm.
being quiet. And that's the wrong way to do it, because she's not kind to herself, but she's not kind to her children either. She's not protecting them, and she's actually showing them what not to do in society. I remember specifically when she said to me, "Be quiet because your father might get angry." And I was taught that very early, that if he is in a bad mood, I need to shut up. Otherwise, something bad is going to happen either to me or to my brothers. And this is programming.
Yeah.
This is not love, this is programming. I can see it that she didn't know how to do better. But at the same time, we are all sovereign beings. We are all beings that are here to explore this reality. And also, we are here to remember who we are.
Mm.
And if you're closing down in this fear all the time, you will not be able to remember who you are. And you will give this to your children as a mode of operandum in this reality. They will choose the same way of doing it, and that's how it continues in eternity. My responsibility as a human being is to stop and say, wait, is this really true? Am I protecting, or am I teaching them something that is not good?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is my responsibility to do so. And for years, I did not like my mother, because I thought that she wasn't taking the responsibility to know who she is and to act from that sovereignty.
Mm.
Now that I look back on it, I know that she, as I say, she didn't know better. This is her life path. This is what she was here to explore. But
Yes.
that has nothing to do with me.
Yes. Yes. That is so many things.
Nothing. Yeah,
Nothing. Nothing. It
nothing.
zero. I
Mm,
mean, you said so much that this is really just a beautiful hour, because it's like
mm,
some people are saying, thank you for talking about this sensitive subject topic and
mm,
putting words on it.
mm.
Um, you said, you know, be quiet, or your mom
Yeah.
said be quiet. And I remember this time, and just I'm reminded of it right now, where I told on my brother, and my mom brought my brother into their bedroom, and then all I heard was hitting and him screaming over and over and over. And then she opened the door and said, I this is what happens when you tell. And she faked it, and they conspired together. So it was so fucking crazy. Just in every way, it was don't tell, don't talk, don't speak the truth. Just become a a
Yes.
shell of a human being.
Mm,
And I remember doing plant medicine the very first time. I remember telling you about this, where my
mm,
friend said in the ceremony, just let the medicine lead you. Don't fight it. Just see where it wants to teach you. And I was walking like I was planting roots in the ground. It was like boom, boom. And I realized in that moment that I was reclaiming my beingness here on earth,
mm, mm.
that I never wanted to be on. I could disassociate. I could fly out of my body. I could,
Yes.
I'd be in meetings, sometimes board meetings, and like
Mm,
people are talking. Time has passed. How do they think that I'm still listening? Because I was
mm,
somewhere else. And
mm,
I've had to learn to reclaim, come back into my body. It's safe to be here now.
mm,
And from this place, speak and help others do the same. Speak.
mm,
Yeah,
mm,
it's very
mm,
beautiful what you're sharing.
mm. It is about speaking, it is about looking at it from a higher perspective,
Mm,
looking at it from a perspective that might give you some peace within you, to see that there is nothing wrong with you. What your parents did is more a story of who they were, not who
mm.
you were, if you were in an abusive family.
Yeah, yeah.
Usually this is how this is how civilizations actually evolve. The children are always more conscious than the parents.
Yeah.
And I know this by experience. My son is more conscious than me.
Yeah,
I
same
knew that
time.
when he was a little child. I could look in his eyes and I knew that there is so much more consciousness
Mhm.
there. As a parent, I need to understand that it is my responsibility to take care of that child until the child can take care of itself,
Yeah,
but also to know that this child has a higher consciousness than me, and not feel jealous, not try to teach the child to know its place,
yeah,
because the child comes with a higher consciousness.
yes, yes,
And it is my job to acknowledge that, to stand as someone who will carry the child into adulthood without wanting anything back for it.
mm,
To understand that there is higher consciousness, to allow that higher consciousness to elevate me too,
yeah,
to rise with my child. That is why. I mean, look at elephants and elephant mothers, what they will do with their children. They will be there for them all the time, unconditionally.
yeah,
The animal world does this, but we do not know how to do this. We want to have something in return because we
yeah,
gave life to it.
right, right.
This is ego speaking from the first breath. And
Hmm.
that is not how this world is supposed to be. The way I see it from a highly spiritual perspective, our job as parents is to give life, take care of that life until the life can take care of itself, and understand that this life comes with higher consciousness.
Yes, yes. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And this topic, although sensitive and
Mm,
it's so needed. We need to have
yes.
these conversations, and there's no shame. And whether we had the best parents or the worst parents, it's our responsibility to heal ourselves. And it's our responsibility to, like you said, from that highest perspective, look at it and feel no more guilt or shame or judgment, and just speak our truths and
Mm,
honor our parents just by the lives that we live, by being the highest conscious being that we can, the most loving to the world, holding space and not continuing the cycle.
Exactly. Honoring your parents is actually about stopping the pain that was inflicted upon them and
Yeah.
inflicted upon you, to heal yourself so that you won't let that be a contamination to your children.
That's right.
That is what it means to honor them, to say, no, I am stopping this, because they couldn't. They were given a chance to do it and they couldn't. So it's your job to do it.
That's right.
In a sense, you help them with their mission because they couldn't do it. So
Right.
you have to do it.
Yes. Yes. It's beautiful.
Yes. And on
Beautiful.
that note, we end this day.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching and listening and your comments. And we will do this again next Sunday.
Yes, I think we can continue this, maybe tweak it a little bit and see where it leads us. But I think that the subject is really interesting. So we continue it next Sunday.
I love it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank